In this video, we'll go through the process of creating our own dynamic blocks and electrical blocks to be used to make an electrical plan. As with the other videos, let's go ahead and copy our current model over. I'm also going to turn off dimensions, annotations, doors, and windows. From the file for the electrical symbols we want to create, you can see that we want to create 7 different electrical symbols: recessed light, fixtures, sconces, phone lines, cable and internet, wall outlets, and switches. We can see that it's kind of split up into 3 categories. We have lighting, specialty connection, and switches and outlets. We'll create 3 separate dynamic blocks for these 3 different categories. To start a new block, under the block panel, simply hit Create, and we can open in Block Editor, and we'll name this dynamic block Lighting. Now we're within the block editor, which is a separate modeling space specifically for the block we're currently working on. You can still hit Home and use all the same draw and modify tools as before to be able to create your separate blocks. We're going to make a circle at 0, 0. That's 5 inches in radius. This will be used to represent our recessed light. A recessed light is a light that is inserted into the ceiling and does not cross below the ceiling level. A fixture is a light that hangs from the ceiling and is represented by a circle with 4 points on the end. We'll simply offset this circle a distance of 2 inches and trim to that outer circle. And finally, we'll use a line on the right side to represent a sconce. A sconce is a light fixture that pops off of a wall. Just like when we used the dynamic door block from the previous video, we can set different views for the block just as the door had, with its different angles of how open it was. In order to access this feature, under the block authoring palette, click Visibility. This will place a visibility selector with our block. If the authoring palette is not currently in view, make sure it is selected under the Managed palette under Block Editor. We can now create separate visibility states and name them according to the block that we're using. Once we have these different visibility states, we can adjust what is shown under each state. For the recessed light, the only thing we need to show is the circle. In order to do that, we're going to select all of the other parts that apply to the other blocks, right-click, Object Visibility, and hide for current state. Now, if we select recessed light, the only thing that we'll see is the circle. We can then go to Light Fixture and simply turn off this wall sconce line. And finally, under sconce light, we can turn off these that are used for fixture. Now, if we go through each of our viewing states, we can see that we have all 3 separate blocks in one dynamic block. We could add parameters to scale and resize this block, but for the purpose of these videos, the size of these lighting fixtures is just fine. We'll save this block, close the block editor, and come back to our regular modeling space. Now, with the electrical layer selected, we can insert a specific block. Then we can see when we select this block that we can choose which type of light we want to use. Additionally, we can use some text within our modeling space to name this block. Now, using the same process, let's make the phone line and cable and internet line dynamic block, and then the wall outlet and switch outlet block. Again, create. I'm going to start at 0, 0, go 5 inches up, 10 inches over, and make a 10-inch box. Because we had a radius of 5 inches on our lighting, this block will match the block size for lighting. A feature that we'll use now that I haven't shown you before is Hatch, which is located just in the Draw toolbar. Hatch allows you to fill an enclosed area with a pattern. In this instance, we'll use just solid to fill it in. I'll show you how to use Hatch more in detail later when we go over landscaping. Much like we did with the lighting dynamic block, we'll insert visibility setting. We'll adjust the visibility states for the phone line and cable and internet. Cable and internet uses the exact symbol we finished creating, but phone line will hide the hatch. We now have our two visibility states for our one dynamic block. We'll save the block, close the block editor, and insert it into our model. Finally, we'll make the wall outlet and switch dynamic block. For this one, we'll use a smaller circle for the wall outlet. Next, we'll actually use mText to make the letter S to represent our switch. We can use sans serif to give us a bolder S. Again, we'll use visibility states to make wall outlet and switches. Under switch, we just want the S and the center line going straight up through it. So we'll turn off the circle and the two lines. Then under wall outlet, we'll do the reverse. Save the block and close the block editor. And now we have outlets and switches. With these three dynamic blocks created, we now have everything we need to be able to do the electrical plan. And we've learned how to make and use, in more detail, blocks and dynamic blocks. In the next video, we'll use furniture to model out the interior of the home and to help us understand where to use the electrical blocks we've just created.